Okay, welcome to It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach with your host, Sister A. LeGree. Again, this is It's Getting Better All the Time Mental Health Outreach with your host, Sister A. LeGree. You can find more about us by logging on to our website at igbattmho.org or igbatt.com. And today I wanted to talk about bipolar 1 disorder. You know, as we get closer to May is Mental Health Month. And usually what happens as it gets closer to May, everyone starts talking about mental health, right? People start saying things like, and depending on what group you are in, people say things like, oh, well, I don't know why this group of people, they don't care about mental illness. That's the problem. We never talk about mental illness. People just so, they don't want to talk. They are afraid of mental illness. And I thought it was interesting because I'm looking at some things that's happening in the news, how the same people in May will talk about what we should do. We should be talking more about mental illness. We should be more sympathetic or empathetic. We should understand more. Or some of the same people who are being judgmental right now. When we talk about severe and persistent mental illnesses, we have mental illnesses, which we talk about, and then there's a subset, which is we call severe and persistent mental illnesses. These are mental illnesses that are chronic. They may come and go. They come in episodes, right? We're looking at schizophrenia, bipolar, for example, two of the most notable ones. So again, a person with a severe and persistent mental illness, their symptoms are just that severe and persistent. There may be times when they may be doing well, and then there'll be times when they have an episode. It's just like if you have diabetes or hypertension. You may be fine for a while and then something triggers in and then you have to make an adjustment, to your medications or something like that. Well, it's the same thing when we talk about severe mental illness. But I wanted to take a minute to just share some symptoms, talk about bipolar. Okay? Bipolar, formerly called manic depressive illness. I think a long time ago, some of you may have heard the term manic depressive illness. Well, it's not called that anymore. It's actually bipolar. It's a mental disorder that causes shifts in a person's mood. It's a mood disorder. It impacts a person's way they think, feel, and behave. There are three different types of bipolar disorder. Today I'm going to talk about bipolar 1. Bipolar 1, well, let me say that all types of bipolar involve a change in mood, energy, and activity level. The moods range from periods of extremely up, elated, irritable, or energized behavior, known as manic episodes, to very down, sad, indifferent, or hopeless periods, which is known as depressive disorder. Bipolar 1 disorder, which is what I want to talk about, is defined by manic episodes that last, 7 days or so, or by manic episodes that are so severe that the person needs immediate hospital care. And then you have depressive episodes. So when you look at bipolar disorder 1, you're looking at the mania, at least 7 days, as well as, and again, some people less or more, 7 days, as well as the depressive episode, okay? So when we talk about bipolar disorder, what are some of the signs and symptoms of bipolar disorder? People with bipolar disorders experience periods of changes in their emotions, changes in sleep patterns, activity level, and uncharacteristic behaviors, often without recognizing their likely harmful or undesirable effects. I've worked with people who have bipolar disorder, and in their manic episode, the manic phase, they will just leave their house one day, and I'll get a call. I'm in D.C. I'll get a call from a social worker out in Maine and telling me that one of our patients is out in Maine and was trying to cross the border, but of course he didn't have the proper documents, so they had to call. So again, they do that. Or sometimes in a manic episode, our brothers and sisters, because they are our brothers and sisters, who are in a manic episode or having a bipolar 1 episode, they'll find themselves, they'll spend a whole lot of money. They'll find themselves in increased sexual activity. They go from one girlfriend to the other, right? They go from one person to the other. These are the people you might say, oh, they act kind of like whores, whatever, right? Or promiscuous. But sometimes that may be true, but sometimes it's part of the illness. Okay, keep in mind, and another thing I want to say here, I was trying to follow my notes this time, is that it's two things can happen at the same time, can exist at the same time. A person can have a bipolar disorder and a personality. Everybody, we all have personalities. The personalities doesn't go away. The personality is still there. Okay, so kind of keep that in mind. So I think what's happening is when you look at someone, if just because you don't like the person, you're going to assume that they just fake it. Just because you don't like the person. No, the person could have a mental health diagnosis, a mental health disorder, and still be a person that you don't like. It doesn't take away from the fact that they're sick. And many times what you're looking at, that you symptoms that you deem as just who they are really parts of their diagnosis, are really parts of their illness, right? So kind of keep that in mind. For example, some of the symptoms of manic disorder, and I'm going to start with this one here, because I see this a lot. Feel like they're unusually important, talented, or powerful. We call that, or some of you call that term, what do you guys like to say? It's a fad term that everybody just keep using now. They're narcissistic. Okay. First of all, a lot of people are using that term and really don't know what the term actually means it's from a mental health diagnosis, when it's used. The DSM-5 is, you can pull it up online, you can read it, you can take a look at it, and it might be helpful. We don't have as many people with a narcissistic disorder as you may think, as the media may have you to think. But anyway, when we look at a person with a bipolar disorder, there's an unusual sense of importance, talented, they feel talented or powerful. They can do anything, okay? They can fly, they can, they'll win $1 million, which again goes back to their behavior, their risk-taking behavior. Because if I think in my mind that I know, okay, I know that I'm an excellent person in picking out the horses. Okay, I know which horse is going to win. In my mind, I have this grandiose sense of belief that I'm a good gambler. So I go and I spend all my money. The fact that I spent all my money and I lost everything doesn't mean anything. I'm going to keep going and going and going and going until I can't go anymore, until the mania has subsided. Okay, so again, feeling like they're unusually important, talented, or powerful. Some of you may call narcissistic or grandiose, which is what it is, a grandiose thought, grandiose behavior, but that's part of the diagnosis. Another symptom, do risky things such as showing poor judgment, such as eating and drinking excessively, spending or giving away a lot of money, or have reckless sex. And again, we see this a lot, okay? Unfortunately, a lot of women, men too, but I've seen it a lot with women who are diagnosed with bipolar disorder. They usually get used a lot. They get used a lot because the men see them and they're just so excited and happy to see this woman, and they just take advantage of them, guy after guy after guy after guy, not really realizing that this woman is in the midst of a manic episode, that she has bipolar. It's not until she comes out of the episode that she gets help and start looking back at her life and realize, okay, these are the things that I've done. And I want to talk to you, also want to say here, and talk to you, if you are diagnosed with bipolar, and you, now that you're on the mend, and you find yourself, or you recollect some things that you may have done, just know that there's grace and there's forgiveness, okay? You can move on. You can learn from it. It's part of the illness, right? Now you know. Okay, the thing is, if you're dealing with bipolar disorder or any disorder, whether it's schizophrenia or depression, whatever the case is, it's important for you to develop a personal treatment plan. It's not a treatment plan, but a crisis plan. You want to know what your symptoms are, identify what your symptoms are. Okay, you want to kind of be paying attention to when your symptoms change. Also, keep in mind that stress will also trigger symptoms. So again, when you talk about severe mental illness, stress is a trigger, okay? Such as a divorce, such as fighting for custody of your children. And especially if you're not a person who's not taking your medications as you should, or you're not seeing a doctor as you should, which is, again, for those of you who don't have bipolar, or those of you who are not dealing with a severe mental illness, it's difficult to take medications, 3 and 4 pills sometimes every day. Please know that sometimes it takes a while to get the medications correct. Also, it takes a while for some people to realize that they do have a mental health disorder. And I don't want to say some people, these are our brothers and sisters. These are our family members, right? It takes a while. It's just like, you imagine you're fine, life is going great, and then you have an accident, you go into the hospital, emergency room, and you find out now that you may never walk again. It came sudden. Sometimes that's what happens with a mental illness. There's a period that a person needs to kind of get used to having the mental illness. I have to get used to the fact that my life is changing. I have to get used to the fact that I have to take medications maybe for the rest of my life when we talk about severe and persistent mental illnesses. Not all of the time, but many times that is the case, especially when we look at bipolar disorder. It takes a while, especially if a person is very high functioning and they were doing well, and they were able to manage their symptoms. Right? They're able to manage their symptoms. There are certain diagnoses that people are able to manage. Also keep in mind what helps us a lot, what helps our brothers and sisters is the support systems that we have around us. So many times, like for example, many times people will say, my son was fine before he went away to the Army. My son was fine before he went away to college. They must have put something in his drink. This must have happened. You want to blame it on the college, you want to blame it on the military, right? But many times what has happened is that your son or daughter has always had a predisposition. There's always been something going on with him or her, but because they were in a supportive environment and they had supportive people, they were able to manage. You got used to them, they got used to you. How many of us have our brothers and sisters or family members who we know just might be a little odd, depending on where you are, what part of the country. You may say, oh, that person just touched, or that person just has some issues going on with them, but you're used to them. You grew up with them. You grew up with Uncle Dave acting this way. You grew up every time your father, he would get up, he would walk around the house talking to himself, or he would get up early in the morning. Whatever the case is, we got used to it. But the issue that comes in is that once a person leaves that supportive system, i.e. like going to school, i.e. like going away to the military, and they're around people who don't know them, who are not familiar with their ways, so to speak, that can trigger their symptoms. Okay? If I no longer have my family support system that were there for me, now I'm in college, I'm responsible for getting to class on my own. I'm responsible for buying my books, going to the bookstore. I'm meeting new people, for socializing, right? I'm doing all these new things that I've never done before without support systems, right? I'm raising a family now without support systems that I used to have. I'm in the middle of a divorce right now. I'm in the middle of family custody right now without the support systems. It's a stressor. Stressors will trigger, symptoms, can trigger episodes. Right? And once an episode is triggered, or more likely to trigger an episode is triggered, then now the person is out of control. Now what you're seeing is the mania, you're seeing the depression, you're seeing everything on center stage. And instead of being sympathetic, and just saying, this person is going through an episode, when I'm seeing this aggression, quote unquote, that we call it aggression, as part of their illness. This is what they go through. Instead of praying for the individual, for those of you who pray, instead of trying to get this person help, we're not doing that because we don't like the individual personally. Our own personal feelings come out. The thing is, here's the thing: either you're in mental health, you're one of those people that support the need for people to get mental health treatment, or you're not. Right? I don't want to hear some of you people when May comes around talking about, mental health, we got to help people with mental illness, and you don't have compassion, or you don't have compassion or grace for someone who's going through an episode, right? In public, right? Episode in public, dealing with the stressors in public, and just because you don't like the individual, you want to dismiss it. Just kind of keep that in mind. So when you wonder why there's a stigma, why people don't get help, you're the reason why that people don't get help. You're the reason why. You're the reason why that people don't get help is because you combine it to you get you and your feelings, right? If I like you and you tell me you have a mental illness, then it's fine. If I don't like you, or you said something I don't like and you try to say you have a mental illness, then I'm going to say you're faking. Right? You're the problem. Okay, when stigma, why does stigma continue? Stigma, discrimination. Why do people don't get help? Why do people suffer in silence? Because of people like you, if that, whoever I'm talking to. Okay. Another thing, more symptoms. They think they can do a lot of things at once, right? And again, just working with the people that I know, they, one person, she's my excellent painter. She beautiful painter. But they paint, and then she has her painting going, this painting over here going, this painting over here going, this painting going, and then she's doing 2 or 3 other things at the same time. Again, all over the place. Feel like their thoughts are racing. Right? The thoughts are coming rapidly. The thoughts are just racing in their head, which means their speech. Okay? These are people who once they get latched on to something, once they focus on something, then that's what they're focused on. Okay? They talk very fast about a lot of different things, from one place to the other, have a loss of appetite, have a decreased need for sleep, feel jumpy or weird, feeling very high, elated, irritable, or touchy. And these are talking about the manic episode symptoms. This is what I'm talking about. Again, as I said, you're talking about the depression, but I wanted to spend some time on the mania because I think that's what we're seeing a lot of right now in the news. People who are in the middle of a manic episode or hypomanic episode. Again, when we talk about bipolar disorder, we're talking about a severe mental illness. A mental illness that has highs and lows, that may have different episodes. So kind of keep that in mind. A person can have a mental illness and be a person that you don't like at the same time. Are people with mental illness violent? According to the research, people with a mental illness are no more violent than anyone else. However, it changes if that person is not taking their medications or if there's alcohol and drugs involved. So once you have alcohol and drugs involved and a person not taking their medication, a person can become more violent, okay? But many times what happens is that the violence is done against them. Again, especially when we're talking about women, there are a lot of women who've been raped, a lot of women who have been abused, a lot of women who have children and 7, 8 kids, they don't know who the father is or even where the kids are. So again, a person with a severe mental illness, is not necessarily a violent person. They're only violent if they're off their medications. Also keep in mind, when you have your personality, if your personality is already a 10, when you couple that with your hypomania, then it can be an 11 or 12. So just kind of keep that in mind. I think it's important for us, especially as we talk about helping a person with mental illness, that we get the education and that we read. I think I would encourage people to do that. And actually go to like NIMH, National Institute of Mental Health. Go to places like SAMHSA. Don't just pull up anything off of the internet, right? Get some really real information. I think that will be important. So I entitled this The Ye Dilemma, the Kanye West Dilemma, because you're looking at someone who is acting out in public, and you can clearly see that some of his illnesses, some of his symptoms, the symptoms of his illness on display. And you can also see his personality as well. And you can also, for me, it's just interesting to look at people. Some of the people don't know what to say, right? Because you don't like him, because of some of the things he said in the past, then you'll want to say, okay, that's just who he is. Not realizing who he is a person who's been diagnosed, a person who's living with a severe mental illness. And a person living with a mental illness, number one, they're not going to always think that they have a mental illness. Again, that's part of the diagnosis. For those of you who have a brother or sister or family member with a severe mental illness, you know what I'm talking about, because sometimes they may go through the stages where they don't think they need to take medication. They think they're fine. Everything is going great. In their eyes, everything is going great. You're the problem, they're not the problem. And we know how challenging and difficult that can be. Living with someone, being around someone with a severe mental illness is a lot. It's definitely a lot for the family member or for the person that has to deal with it. It's definitely a lot, right? So again, so that's on on that side. On the other side, and again, for those of you who are new to the broadcast, it's getting better all the time, mental health outreach. I have three main audiences. I have the person with the diagnosis. I have the family member or loved one who is experiencing the diagnosis through their loved one. And then I have the people who don't even know what I'm talking about, who never been around anyone with a severe mental illness, have never been around anyone with a mental illness. The only thing they know is what they hear around on May, which is Mental Health Month, if they hear that. So I'm talking to three different audiences. So for those of you who have never dealt with a person with a severe mental illness, it's no joke. If you've never been around a person with bipolar and lived with that person, then you don't know how difficult it is. You don't know how challenging it could be. You don't know how frightening it can be as well. Because if you're a family member, you never know what's going to happen, who's they're going to hurt, or they're going to get hurt by somebody else sometimes in their manic episode. You don't know, what they're going to do when you're asleep, right? There are some family members and friends, when their loved ones are in their manic episode, they can't sleep because they don't know what's going on. I have a friend of mine who works with me on this broadcast. Her husband, in his episodes, he'll throw away all the food. She'll go to sleep, wake up, all the food is out. She'll go, to work, come back home, all the stuff is sitting out. Because in his mind, he's like, okay, I want to do this. I'm going to get rid of the food because it's poison. Then I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And these things are just chaos. So again, it's really important for us to kind of get educated about severe, persistent mental illness. Use this opportunity of what you're seeing now to get educated. And don't get fooled by what you see, what's happening in the media, right? Because, again, the media has their agenda. And I say media, just the people in entertainers, media, whatever. They have their agenda. But then those of us who understand severe mental illness, we get it. I understand that you guys have your agenda and that he's a bad, Kanye West is a bad person. That's how we're trying to paint it. That's fine. But the danger in trying to paint him as a bad person, like what the media and what everybody is doing, many people are doing, is that it discourages other people from coming out of the closet about their mental illness. See, when you say, oh, he's just doing that because he's narcissistic, or he's just doing that because that's just who he is, then if I'm a person that's struggling with a severe mental illness and I hear that, then I'm not going to come out. I'm going to continue to suffer in silence. Because there are many people who are walking around who have the same symptoms, or dealing with the same things, dealing with their racing thoughts, who are having the grandiose ideas. Because keep in mind, it's like you're in your body and you're not in your body. There's a point in the illness where you can see yourself going through different things, but sometimes you can't stop yourself. And then there's a point where you get to where you can't, you can't stop yourself. You're not even having that thought process. But when you're first starting to become unwell, you know that you're becoming unwell. You know that you're cycling out and beginning to lose control. And up to a certain point. But once you get to that certain point and you're in a full-blown manic episode or full-blown psychosis, then you don't know that anymore. But initially, many people sometimes have the insight to know that something is going wrong, something is not right with me. Okay, that's when you start seeing more alcohol use, more drug use. Because I know something is happening with my mood. I don't put it together, but the alcohol and drugs help me. I know something is going on, but the sex helps me. The spending the money helps me. Until you get to a point where you're just totally out of control when we talk about the manic phase or psychosis. Which is why it's so important that for you, if you're living with a severe mental illness, I always preach it's important for you to know your illness, and your illness, of course, to know your symptoms. To have somebody around you that you can reach out to when you see yourself starting to become unwell. Because what we want to do, we want to catch the symptoms before they get worse, right? Psychiatric relapse does not just happen overnight. Psychiatric relapse happens over a period of time, right? So again, you can catch yourself. You can see yourself going down. These medications don't work like that unless you go into the hospital and you get a Haldol or a a cocktail. But what I'm saying is that it's not like if you stop taking the medications on Monday, we're going to start seeing symptoms on Wednesday. No, it usually takes a period of time. Relapse happens overnight. What signifies relapse? Change. So again, when you start seeing changes in your life, then that's a problem. Or when you start feeling as if you're having changes, or when your loved one or family member, you notice it starts to make these changes. So it's really important that those of you who are listening to me while I'm doing this taping, is that you, one, become educated about mental illness, which is so important, that you educate your loved one about mental illness, and that you don't be ashamed to come out of the closet and talk about what's going on with you and your symptoms. Okay? Don't let what people are saying cause you not to come out. Right? There are treatments for people who are dealing with mental illness, whether they're severe and persistent mental illness. There is hope available. But if you're looking at what's happening in the news and you're scrolling the internet and you see some of the comments that people are making, it can discourage you. Please don't let it discourage you. Right? Come out of the closet, get help. Right? There is help available. There are supportive people around you. Yeah, there are definitely supportive people here. Again, this is It's Getting Better All the Time, Mental Health Outreach with your host, Sister A. Legree. You can find out more about us by logging onto our website at igbatt.com. Again, write us, or you can write us at P.O. Box 7432, Silver Spring, Maryland 20910. Again, It's Getting Better All the Time, igbatt.com. Visit our website, send us an email or a postcard. And just remember that no matter what you're going through, that you can make it. Things can change. Right? Today, tomorrow can be different. It doesn't have to be how it was today. God bless you and have a great day.